Hey everybody, my name is Rainy, and I'm with Rumham today. We're going to do a little bit of an analysis on Super Magical Cup number 4, taking a look at the finals between Scrazzor and Manufan. So just so you guys know, Manufan and Scrazzor faced off in this most recent Super Magical Cup, and in Super Magical Cup number 3, Manufan actually was the first place winner. And Scrazzor is kind of the new guy. We haven't seen him participate in Super Magical Cups before, but he made it all the way to the finals and ended up defeating Manufan to take the first place finish. We wanted to take a look at that series and look at some of the reasons why Scrazzor was super successful, and also look at some very interesting decks played. So, in the Super Magical Cup, you need to submit 2 decks to play, and in order to defeat your opponent in your best of 3 series, you need to win with both of the decks that you submitted. So once you win with your first deck, you then must switch to your second deck and win with that one as well. Let's take a look at the 2 decks that these players used. Manufan has a Royal Giant deck, Inferno Tower, Princess, Ice Wizard, all really great synergistic cards for the deck, and Inferno Tower is kind of a really popular card now to destroy big bodies like other Royal Giants and anything else that might come your way. The only big thing to note is that there is no Barbarians. It is instead of Valkyrie, which I think is great. I think it's kind of an aggressive change to the deck because he's really looking to take down the Barbarians on the other side.
Instead of playing Barbarians like most Royal Giant decks, he's playing the card that beats Barbarians, and then he uses it in own way as well. Like Valkyrie will take care of goblins, take care of skeletons, things like that. It's very similar to the deck that Manufan played in last week's Super Magical Cup. He played a deck that had Royal Giant, Ice Wizard, and Princess in both decks. This week he only has 1 Royal Giant deck, although it still maintains those 3 core cards. Scrazzor's playing a very interesting deck. It sort of looks like a spiritual successor to the Jason the Giant deck from Helsinki. It's running I believe like 5 of the same 8 cards, but it's a little different. It's interesting that if you replace Giant with Royal Giant, the deck would look very familiar in a lot of ways. So I almost wonder if Scrazzor decided to sort of outthink the Royal Giant meta by playing a deck that's very similar to Royal Giant, but with a much sturdier tank behind it. If you consider that most people are playing their defensive towers to absorb nearly all of the Royal Giant's damage, you might be better off with just a regular Giant that can power through as opposed to finesse.
So those are their first decks, and the second decks that they will utilize are listed here. So Manufan's actually picked up a very, very, very interesting deck. I think it's probably the most unique deck that we've seen.
I'd call it the deck of the tournament. I mean, if there's any deck that I expected to never see before this week and then see it a lot in the ladder moving forward, I think it would be this Miner deck. A lot of players at the top are already using Miner, but mostly as a supplement to existing strategies. This is one of the first decks I've seen that seems to really rely on the Miner in a good way. It's the crux of the deck, and you see when we actually watch this game, you'll see how important the Miner is to the strategy. What's really interesting about this deck is that he's opted to get away without arrows or fireball. Some of the most commonly played cards, Manufan decided to just not really have any direct damage.
And the big thing about Manufan that we noted as from his previous tournament performance is that he's just really good at setting up his mini P.E.K.K.A. to do huge amounts of damage. And so it seems like a super appropriate deck for a player of that kind of style to really make a deck that's looking for damage from the mini P.E.K.K.A., and we'll see that. Meanwhile, Scrazzor is playing a very, very, very incredibly cheap Hog Cycle deck. Just 2 elixir, 1 elixir, 2 elixir on the zap, and then the Hog Rider on top is just incredibly cheap.
Very, very popular archetype on the ladder. You know, I'm glad to see a skilled Hog player show up in the finals, showing off kind of the power of the Hog Cycle decks.
All right, so without further ado, let's go ahead and take a look at what transpired in the series, and we're gonna note some interesting things here. First of all, the reason why I think Scrazzor was super successful in the tournament is just his smart defensive positioning of his units, and we're gonna get to see that here in the opening moments of this game. So first things first, Elixir Collector as an opener is great. It's kind of, you know, especially when your opponent has the hand that Manufan did. Let me just take a look. He played the Ice Wizard and he cycled into, I think, a Valkyrie or an Inferno Tower or something like that.
Manufan didn't have any way to generate a push and really punish Scrazzor right away for playing it, nor is his deck really like a fast punishment sort of deck. So instead he opts for a slow push by playing the Ice Wizard back and being like, all right, let's build up a big push with this Ice Wizard when he gets to the river.
And Ice Wizard added on with Valkyrie, and now the Royal Giant. This is a tough push to handle.
13 elixir.
Let's 13 elixir committed. Let's take a look at how Scrazzor does it. Now he does have the cannon in hand, and obviously people have learned to do this.
Perfect time.
It's not as easy as it looks, but it's definitely something you need to figure out how to do. So, look at exactly how this plays out. He plays a cannon on the left side, and that means that the Royal Giant is now not attacking the tower, and instead tagged onto the cannon. The cannon is making its way into the Valkyrie, but the super important thing about this push is that the Valkyrie actually got drawn over to the left, and the Valkyrie has pretty slow move speed. It's not quite as slow as something like a P.E.K.K.A, but it's incredibly slow. And so having it be drawn over to the left and then placing the Barbarians on the right allows Scrazzor to buy time to provide a lot of uptime for his Barbarians onto the Royal Giant and do a ton of damage. As we see this push play out, we're going to see something else that's super interesting about what happens with this push. Notice how the Barbarians line themselves up in a straight line. Now the Valkyrie is going to bump into the first Barbarian that it sees and try to do its attack at that point. And take a look at that. Its area of effect is not hitting the Spear Goblins, nor is it hitting the other 3 Barbarians. And this provides Scrazzor more than enough damage to just eliminate the Royal Giant. He adds on the Musketeer.
And noted the Musketeers on the left side where the Valkyrie just was.
Yeah.
So even if those Barbarians did get cleaned up, the Valkyrie would have to walk backwards to the Musketeer.
He's playing Valkyrie ping pong, essentially. And so...
I mean, incredible defense by Scrazzor right here. He was able to hold off, I believe we did the math on it, like 15 or 17 elixir for much less, for about 10 or 12 elixir on defense. And even though he took some damage on his tower, the ability to get that far ahead in elixir, if you look right now, they're about even in elixir, except that Scrazzor has a Musketeer, a full health Musketeer on the board, and an elixir collector that's still pumping away.
Yeah. And essentially, that's going to cause Manufan to have to play Goblins that end up becoming pretty much a waste of 2 elixir. He saves tower health, but essentially he just had to pay that tax, right?
And that gave an opportunity for Scrazzor to get his second elixir collector out. So now he's ahead by quite a bit of elixir. I mean, over the course, even if their elixir bars are even remotely close, Scrazzor's so far ahead because he has so much elixir in escrow that's going to be paid out to him in the future.
Yeah, and getting that 1 minute into the game is 1 minute 54. Getting into a double elixir position is really, really good and what you're looking for in this
What that really allows you to do is to push and take a tower before the timer goes out. What you don't want to do is get into overtime where the first tower can automatically lose you the game. You sort of want to be in a position where it's on them, the burden's on them to take a tower before the timer goes out. I think that was just a throwaway fireball. I mean, I think he didn't have anything in his hand that he wanted to put together a big push with. He just wanted to cast the spells out of his hands to get back to his strong units. So maybe fireballing wasn't great, but arrowing the princess was certainly good. And it didn't leave any Ice Wizards or Princesses behind to back up the Royal Giant, which are 2 of the best support cards behind a Royal Giant.
The idea Scrazzor has right now is, even though he's got his double elixir set up, this is something that he's going to look to constantly extend. He never wants to let go of this lead of having 2 elixirs on the field. What he wants to do now is cycle his deck such that he has an aggressive lineup so that he can set up his offense perfectly. And what that means taking Manufan's second push here. So this is the cost. He's paying all this cost up front to provide himself the game state that he wants, right?
And I think this is the first time we're going to see Scrazzor generate a really threatening counter push.
Yeah.
So the first time, he did repel the offense very well, but because he was down on elixir a little bit with the collector and all that, he ended up taking a lot of damage. I think this is the first time, or maybe not, because that was, again, great zap by Manufan. We're at least starting to see the tide turn. Notice the first time he took a lot of damage. The second time he didn't take any damage.
The cannon is still alive, and look at the elixir count, right?
Wow, yeah, Scrazzor's definitely ahead, and he's still got another, I mean, there's still 4 or 5 elixir hanging out in that pump.
And this is how you slowly extend your lead farther and farther with elixir pump. And here we see.
And we talk about how control decks use this elixir advantage to eventually push through an unanswerable piece of damage. And you're going to see that right here. I mean, Scrazzor is so far ahead that once they start having their big pushes against each other, Scrazzor just seems like he's casting units out of nowhere.
Yep. So, Scrazzor, again, as a general note to the people who play Clash Royale, to anybody new who plays Clash Royale, when they play a slow big unit in the back, you need to be careful.
Yeah, they're building a big push. Instead of what a really common new player mistake I see is casting something like Giant and Minion Horde at the river, right at the river.
Yeah.
Because what happens is that's all 10 of your elixir. If they can counter that for less than 10 elixir, they're going to, and you're sort of in a bad position. You spent your whole elixir bar. What I really like about playing the Giant far back there is it's going to let, he's already at 6, he's going to let some of it tick back up, and by the time he gets to the river, he'll be able to put together a 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 elixir push, and those are much harder to defend against, even if you have all 10 elixir on their side.
So let's take a look at what he does. Princess gets placed down by Manufan. He's trying to get some early tick damage down. But arrow down easily, and look, Scrazzor just spent his arrows, and he was already at max elixir, just playing the musketeer and coming down to 6. Yep. So basically the arrows were pretty much free. Yeah, pretty much free for him. Now musketeer giant, and okay, so let's take a look at this. This is something that I think a lot of people have trouble with. How do you push past an Inferno Tower, especially when your main card is a giant, right?
They're both at full elixir bars right now. I mean, like, both of them have a full elixir bar, except that all of those collected elixir are kind of on the board right now. You're seeing, what is that, 11 elixir coming down from Scrazzor, and he has another 9, 10 to support it with.
Yep. He has a lot of elixir in the bank, so he's maxed out, and this fireball is great. I just like the fact that the Valkyrie was caught in the middle of it, but it also damages the Inferno Tower, which is super important.
Which becomes very relevant right about now-ish.
Yeah.
So what's interesting is that because he played the giant so far back, Scrazzor did, that by the time the next one came up, he'd played what? Musketeer, Spear Goblins, Arrows, and Fireball, that the giant just comes back into his hand as everything hits the river, and he's able to replace the giant that's about to die with a brand new giant.
Yep, and then the zap spent by Manufan, not enough to take down high health units like the giant or the musketeer. Arrows onto the goblins, and the musketeer will clean that up. And notice how low health that Inferno Tower is, right? Manufan still has a cycle to get hit to his second Inferno Tower. You're going to see how much this hurts Manufan in just a bit. So Scrazzor still has a ton of elixir, is going to support with musketeer and spear goblins. And now look at this situation. Even if Manufan were to play his Inferno Tower, if he plays it in the standard position in the middle, it's very likely that the giant is still going to walk towards the main tower. And even if he plays it a little closer, it just makes it that much easier for the giant simply to turn around and whack the Inferno Tower before he even gets started charging.
The strength of Inferno Tower against big, slow, tanky units is that it heats up and kills them before they ever reach the tower. The downside is if it's right in front of it, that slow heat up time, the giant is just punching at full damage the entire time. The Inferno Tower may not actually kill the giant in that case.
And the choice to reinforce, and this is why I think the Musketeer is so key in Scrazzor's deck, the choice to reinforce with Musketeer's Spear Goblins is the fact that their range means they take effect even quicker, right? So even though they were played very far back, because they have so much range, the Musketeer and the Spear Goblins can get involved very, very fast. So we'll see how this push plays out. Musketeer already getting value onto the Ice Wizard, and the Spear Goblins, because they're small, fast cards, will be able to take down the minions. And I think Manufan made a good choice to try to counter push with the Royal Giant, but just take a look, and this is one of the other things you mentioned earlier, Rumham, that Giant replaces basically the Royal Giant, and then we have a very familiar looking deck. And I think Scrazzor has identified what he likes out of the Giant as opposed to the Royal Giant, and why he feels like it's a much more valuable card in that sense.
Yeah, I would say that counter push decision, while I don't think it was a bad decision by Manufan, it kind of sealed his fate. He looked at his hand and said, I can't really stop this Giant. I don't have anything I can play that's really going to help. Maybe you should have played the Inferno Tower in hindsight, but then you're just setting yourself up for, like, what do I do about the next Giant? And he instead tried to play a counter push, but what ended up happening is the Spear Goblins and the Musketeer are already out, and they're alive. So they're pulling their triggers right away, really starting to burn it down. All it took was that supporting Barbarians, and almost instantly the stuff was down. Great defense by Manufan for what it's worth, by playing the Valkyrie in front of those Barbarians to stop the Barbarian push right away.
Yeah, and you can see how valuable it is for the Barbarians to play keep away from the Valkyrie, because it's super effective. Yeah,
and you'll see it again. This Valkyrie here will chop up these Barbarians really before. I don't think the Ice Wizard even dies. The downside, though, is that the damage had already been done in that Fireball.
Very smart of Scrazzor, and you see he committed actually 2 fireballs worth. The first fireball didn't even hit anything but the tower. But Scrazzor knows, hits over time. It's basically the picture-perfect way to win out a game.
Sure.
I feel like. So, Scrazzor, I think if we were to highlight some key points, Giant instead of Royal Giant, the Royal Giant has a lot of benefits, right? There's a lot of reasons to pick it up. Long range, high damage, very fast. It is fairly tanky. But the Giant, I feel like people have been overlooking now that the Royal Giant is available. The Giant is really, really tanky on its own.
Yeah, I think Giant actually benefits from people being afraid to play their defensive towers preemptively now. They used to play it, you used to just throw them out there, and now you really can't do that. Let's take a look. So I'm really excited. We can jump almost right into this game. We already kind of reviewed the decks. This minor deck, though, is the coolest deck I've seen this week.
Yeah, absolutely.
By far.
I feel like it really set the tone.
It's important to mention that he didn't actually lose with this deck. Like, in the entire tournament, Manufan won every game he played with the minor deck, but because he had to play 2 different decks, he ended up losing with his other deck. It's interesting that maybe next week we'll see Manufan with just 2 minor decks.
So something interesting to note is look how uncomfortable this feels, right? So playing a mini P.E.K.K.A. into a Hog Rider Spear Goblin is okay.
It'll kill the Hog Rider at least.
Yeah, it'll kill the Hog Rider, and then what ends up happening is while the mini P.E.K.K.A. tries to go for the kill on the Spear Goblin, is going to lose a ton of health. Look at how much damage it takes, right? And so essentially this mini P.E.K.K.A. is useless.
He's never going to hit the tower normally. But what's this?
But now you see that Manufan will play his Miner just at the right moment.
And the Miner is now tanking the tower, which means that this normally, like, easily shot down mini P.E.K.K.A. is a huge threat. Now, here's what's an interesting thing. Manufan decides just to let this fizzle out. He plays the Skeletons. I think that's a good play from Scrazzor. It's one of the most efficient ways to counter a mini P.E.K.K.A. And he just lets it die out. Manufan is, I think, he's doing information gathering right now. He's trying to just play his cards, see how the reactions come out, and build up a plan for a more effective push later. If you just saw that, you would be like, Miner, who cares? I mean, at the same time, Miner did like about 500 damage to the tower, so that's pretty respectable for 3 elixir. But I would call that kind of like a fizzled push until we see it again. This is where I think Manufan really pulls ahead. Watch how this single cannon and a zap hold off everything.
All right.
So right there, I really don't like the play of Scrazzor following the mini P.E.K.K.A. up with the Hog, because what happened here is you have mini P.E.K.K.A. and Goblins. Manufan plays cannon. Now, that cannon would probably resist the whole push. I assume what Scrazzor thought was going to happen was that the Goblins and mini P.E.K.K.A. were going to kill the cannon. Now there's no cannon. The Hog Rider gets a straight beeline to the tower. What ends up happening is the zap holds the mini P.E.K.K.A. in place, gets it killed by the tower and the cannon, and now you just have a Hog running at a cannon, which is the worst situation you ever want to be in.
And to make matters worse, it's double towers involved. And this means that the cannon doesn't even die. The Hog Rider just...
If you take a look right here, if you pause it right here, take a look at this. Just from that interaction, Manufan is now 5 elixir ahead. They were pretty even before it, but he was able to counter with 5 elixir, a cannon and a zap, 10 elixir worth of attacking units, and that allows Manufan to play a free elixir collector, which is 3 of my favorite words in the world. Free elixir collector.
Yeah. And even if Scrazzor tried to punish with whatever elixir he had, Manufan can easily just pay whatever it is and match you.
I think he's even just bold to play. I mean, I think he's just happy to play. He knows there's not a Hog and a mini P.E.K.K.A. They just came out, right?
Yeah.
Well, there's nothing you can do. And Scrazzor's in the position. What do you play? Spear Goblins, I guess. Fireball, some damage.
Yep. And I think this is where we can really see the benefits of Manufan's deck right now. Basically, what the win condition that Manufan has, and he's going to execute it right here. Fireball to take the princess, fine.
Here comes mini P.E.K.K.A.
Let's watch this in half.
So this is interesting. So he plays, the elixir collector pump helped a little here because he needs a little bit more than 10 elixir to pull this off. Just plays mini P.E.K.K.A. just normally with the Miner. He's already familiar with this thing. Scrazzor's already seen this push until the minion horde comes down, and you can see Scrazzor freeze for a second. What do I do? I guess I cast the cannon. The cannon's good against the mini P.E.K.K.A., but you can't cast those goblins or the skeletons because they get chewed up. He casts the zap, which is actually a pretty reasonable play, except that with the Miner tanking the tower, that zapped minion horde isn't going anywhere. I mean, they're not getting shot down.
You really need to add on damage on top of that to make sure that the minion horde goes down, and you're going to see just how effective minion horde is going to be. Now, normally, this cannon would actually be enough to kind of take down the mini P.E.K.K.A., but the fact that the minion horde is helping, look at how much damage the cannon takes just that instant.
It already shoots once or twice. It only shoots, I think, twice on the mini P.E.K.K.A., which isn't enough.
And then the back end of the minion horde will take down the skeletons that were dropped there just instantly, and the mini P.E.K.K.A. just continues moving towards the tower.
And I think Scrazzor at the very end here figured it out. He's like, oh, I'm going to play goblins on the Miner. That's what I need to do, is stop the Miner. I can stop the other things, I know that. The Miner is really what's making this really complicated. So even though he does figure it out a little late in the push, we're talking about a matter of seconds here. The damage has already been done. That left tower of Scrazzor's is pretty much wiped off the earth in one push.
Yep, and that's really the strength of this mini P.E.K.K.A. Miner combination.
You might do a cheap push, 12 elixir.
Yeah, it's really the addition of the zap plus the possibility of the minion horde, and Manufan is very, very far ahead at this point. Yep, a single princess shot, and I like the fact that he committed 3. Manufan in the last tournament tried to commit 6 elixir to kill a 3-digit health tower, and that ended up going not very well for him.
Unfortunate hit on the King Tower there by Scrazzor. I know what he was doing, trying to kill the elixir collectors, but hitting the King Tower is really tough for a Hog Rider or a mini P.E.K.K.A. deck because that extra tower shot can actually be the difference between a lot of damage and little damage.
Interestingly, not something that really happens with Royal Giant decks because the Royal Giant always takes forever. But against the Hog, it hurts so much. It hurts so much. It prevents like maybe 2 extra swings from your Hog just because of the double damage coming in. So, Manufan actually responds to this Hog Rider push with a Mini P.E.K.K.A. Miner combination on the right side. And I feel like at this point he's far enough ahead that it justifies him doing this. Even if this, at a good zap, even if this Hog Rider push goes anywhere, he can still get away with it. Unfortunately, I think the fact that he played the Mini P.E.K.K.A. in the middle kind of wrecked that.
Yeah, I mean, it pulled it all the way to the other side, and his Miner's already gone. I really like the Mini P.E.K.K.A. defending against the Miner. It seems like Scrazzor's figured out at this point that, like, if I stop the Miner tanking, then everything else falls into place. I can zap the Minion Horde, I can skeleton the Mini P.E.K.K.A. I can do all that all the stuff I normally want to do, but it starts with getting rid of the Miner.
Yeah. Yep. And again, this cannon has just been so effective against Scrazzor's pushes. Just really, really incredibly cost effective throughout the whole.
I really like that Mini P.E.K.K.A. my Manufan. Again, like that actually, he timed the Hog really well because that time Scrazzor's push worked the way he wanted it to. In that the Mini P.E.K.K.A. killed the cannon, the Hog comes up right behind it. But the Mini P.E.K.K.A. played on Manufan's side was just perfectly placed, and he's fast enough to run down the Hog and use those big sword chops on him.
And here's one thing to note about this push is the timing is very, very tricky. You need to throw the Miner very early.
Yes.
Right, because the
Mini P.E.K.K.A. this time, yeah.
But another thing that's great about this push, these 3 cards, Mini P.E.K.K.A., Miner, and Zap, is they synergize very well. If Manufan decided he wanted to, he could actually zap the tower and then reset the aggro onto the Miner.
Of course. Yeah, that's actually an interesting point. We didn't really realize until halfway through the tournament. You can absolutely zap the tower. You can, of course, if they played goblins around your Miner, you can zap the goblins. Like, there's a lot of great interactions you can pull off.
Yeah. Yeah, and Scrazzor is just so far behind at this point that I feel like
Manufan's sitting there full elixir the whole time.
Yeah, the fact that Manufan has cannon plus Mini P.E.K.K.A. on defense means that this Hog Cycle deck is going to have a very hard time making anything of significance, any kind of push of significance, unless there's big elixir commitment.
Let's see another piece of beauty, but I agree with you. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Hog never had a shot. But look at this thing of beauty. The Miner is just now barely dying, and the Mini P.E.K.K.A. is at full health.
Yep.
That thing would have only needed 2 more shots to tear that tower down. And
and the princess is in the back.
Yeah.
Choose to arrow the princess, now you have to deal with the minion horde.
Right, like, I actually like that too, because you normally want to play your goblins or something to kill the princess effectively, but you need to play the goblins in front of the Mini P.E.K.K.A., right? You don't have that option to do both.
Alright, so Manufan actually took the second game to tie up the series 1-1, but now again Scrazzor is going to demonstrate just how comfortable he is against Royal Giants, and it's actually interesting to think about because on paper I look at this deck, this Hog Cycle deck that Scrazzor has, and initially I feel like I feel a little sketchy about it defending against Royal Giants just because there's so many cheap cards and removal spells like Zap and Arrows would be so great against it, but Scrazzor makes it work really well.
Yeah, it's interesting because the Mini P.E.K.K.A. is great against, I mean, Mini P.E.K.K.A. and Cannon alone is like for 7 elixir, that'll counter most Royal Giant pushes, but I agree that like there's so many good supporting cards against these cards. I mean, the goblins, the minions, the zap. Like, I'm actually I'm probably more impressed with this game out of Scrazzor than any other game in terms of his incredible Royal Giant defense.
I agree.
Especially because this exact same deck, looked so helpless last game against Manufans. Like
Mini P.E.K.K.A. Ninja deck.
Cannon and Mini P.E.K.K.A.
Yeah.
That I didn't expect Scrazzor to pull this game out, but he really does.
Yep. So number 1, Hog Rider Skeleton. I don't really know if there's very much to say about that. Hog Cycle decks, it almost always favors you just to, if you have the Hog Rider plus something, just throw it out, just do it. And because essentially you want to race damage on the tower, right? Get started at the first second.
Great opening, right? Like Manufans have to put together a big push, but for the most part, it worked out fine.
Yeah, and I really like this too. I really like this too. Scrazzor, I think, plays a lot of spear goblins. Actually, we see that out of Manufan also. Just playing a lot of spear goblins and just, letting them defend and then do whatever damage that they can. They're very cheap cards. So, first Royal Giant push, backed up by a Valkyrie. And this is pretty scary, but Scrazzor has a lot of elixir, and we're going to take a look at exactly what you said, Cannon plus Mini P.E.K.K.A.
I mean, I really like so when we talked earlier about the Valkyrie versus Barbarians, what I like about this is that you wouldn't want to play your Goblins into this at all.
Yeah.
It'd be a nightmare to play your Goblins here. So he has to use Mini P.E.K.K.A. We talked about the pulling and the placement. He uses Mini P.E.K.K.A. to draw the Valkyrie over to the right and then play the goblins on the left. Very reminiscent of the barbarian play in the first game.
Just a very minor detail. I mean, one of his goblins got clicked by the Valkyrie AoE, but it's huge. Look at the goblins got a few swings off, and the
Manufan actually had to zap him. The Ice Wizard was attacking so slowly, or doing so little damage to the goblins, that he ended up zapping the goblins, committing another 2 elixir to this push. Just further increasing the good elixir trade for Scrazzor.
And skeletons, of course, #1 way to get an elixir advantage. 1 elixir unit, you pretty much always, if you use it effectively, you're always coming out ahead.
Not great versus towers, though.
Yep, absolutely not. At a minor.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's Scrazzor, and this is what we were talking about, right? Just throw out the spear goblins, just do it. You know?
I mean, at war, if they don't answer it, it's like 200 or 300 damage on their tower. If they do answer it, it's probably a 2 for 2, right? Like these goblins did effectively, didn't do anything.
Yep.
It's a 2 for 2, not bad.
And this is interesting. Inferno Tower against the Hog Rider. Zap against Inferno Tower is something that I feel like we have to really just hammer into people's head.
We saw this a lot in the tournament, and I didn't really like this play almost every time I saw it. The reason why is that Inferno Tower, if you zap it, or stun it, or freeze it, or whatever, will retarget when it comes out of the stun, which means that if there is a closer unit, it will change to that target. I really like Zap, for example, if I have a Royal Giant and they have an Inferno Tower, and the Inferno Tower is locked onto my Royal Giant, I play like Goblins to get ahead of the Royal Giant, and then you zap the Inferno Tower. Royal Giant retargets to the Goblins, everything's great. The downside is that if it retargets on the same target that it had before, it doesn't cool down. It still does that same amount of increased damage. So even though he zapped the Inferno Tower right there, it didn't do what I think Scrazzor thought it would do, which is go back to being a low damage thing. The hog dies almost as soon as it comes out.
Yeah.
Zoink. I mean, like, maybe it would have with low health anyways, but it was doing full damage.
Yeah, and that's the big thing. Like, if you have like a Royal Giant and the Inferno Tower is heating up on the Royal Giant, and then the goblins get ahead and you zap it, it resets the heating and goes back to the goblin, and changing targets for an Inferno Tower takes a long time too, and it buys you so much more time and is way more effective.
I really like this play here where one skeleton goblins not just pulled the Valkyrie backwards a couple steps, but made it swing twice. Still takes some damage from the Valkyrie, but significantly less than the other scenarios. Only one swing. And notice here that Inferno Tower is dead, right? Perfect timing on the Spear Goblin. So once again, like, deal with this card. What are you going to do? You take damage.
That's an elixir inefficient trade. Really.
What I like too is it also forces Manufan into a Royal Giant push he maybe doesn't want to do. He only has 6 elixir. There's really nothing to support it with. But with the Ice Wizard walking, I think he feels like
if he doesn't play anything in front of it, it'll do a good amount of damage. But Scrazzor is actually going to be incentivized to play something like a mini Pekka, or I guess even a cannon he's okay with, you know, and he still has a good amount of elixir to do his cheap hog cycle push.
Only 4 clicks from the actually, interestingly, so the Royal Giant is within range. So the Royal Giant can shoot that cannon because it outranges it. He uses this opportunity to sneak 6 elixir by, not only to attack the tower, but to get some on the Royal Giant. I'd say great defense by Manufan here overall. Like, zapping the goblins on the Royal Giant and then playing goblins on the Hog Rider is like the exact correct thing you should do, but Scrazzor's zap was able to kill those goblins and punch through a ton of hog damage.
And a super important thing to note is all of this whole push, the sequence that allowed Scrazzor to get this tower down to 150 health, it all started because of his repeated use of the Spear Goblins. Just throw out the Spear Goblins, just poking. It's kind of like a jab. He's jabbing to set up for the hook, right?
Yeah, as you can see, the placing of the cannon made Manufan feel like, all right, I should have played the Royal Giant with the Ice Wizard. Okay, now I'll play it. But once he plays that 6 elixir to kill a cannon that's going to tick out on its own, who cares? It created this situation where now, look, we set up for one of Scrazzor's patented amazing counter pushes. That Royal Giant's at like half health, getting completely overrun by the mini Pekka and the skeletons, and there's only a minions there to defend.
Yep. And Mini Pekka does a great job. Look at how much health it chops off. And at this point, minions plus Valkyrie is not too scary, especially when your Mini Pekka is going to get swings onto the Valkyrie. And it's not such a big deal, right?
And once again, the Valkyrie there's in a way that has to swing twice. It doesn't get all of them in a single shot because they're spread out a little bit. I love that placement of the hog pulling the Valkyrie back. Don't like that the goblins got caught up in it. That's unfortunate.
A timing mistake. Ideally, I think Scrazzor's idea was to place the goblins right when the tower shot hit. So that he would have a goblin.
Of course,
hog rider.
The plan was definitely not to lose the goblins to the Valkyrie, but it's just unfortunate timing. Literally a half second off.
But again, it goes to show the level of precision that Scrazzor forces himself to play in, right?
Yes. I wonder if I actually almost question that push too, because that tower's already down to 150. You know you can fireball it. Like, why even spend 4 elixir that's not going to trade with troops? Like, shouldn't you just be almost like pure defense at this point?
Yeah.
Maybe play the hog in the far back if you really want to, just to like.
Yeah. And in many ways, I think, if anything, just play the hog on the right to force him to spend elixir on the right side, because he's not going to take down 2.5k without you challenging it, right?
I like that the Mini P.E.K.K.A is taking all of the Ice Wizard attacks. Mini P.E.K.K.A moves pretty fast, attacks like, kind of fast.
Yeah.
That it actually isn't too terribly hurtful to the Mini P.E.K.K.A, and it lets the Spear Goblins behind it attack without being harassed. Although it looks like a Zap is about to come out here and finish those things off.
Yeah. But still, the Mini P.E.K.K.A swinging away, and this is what we were talking about, right? Scrazzor's deck has so many cheap units that Zap is super effective against it, but in the end, I think how it ended up playing out was very in favor of Scrazzor's cards, because he could cycle super fast and just continuously shove these small units down the lane, and Manufan
You only have one Zap.
Trouble.
You know what I mean? If I have 3 things, you got a Zap, and you only have one of them.
And look, he has the cannon up again.
Yeah, no kidding. The cannon. Oh wow, the cannon really is just there to tank for the minion horde. I mean, it seems like it's a bad trade because the cannon is dying without really killing anything. But at the same time, when you only have 800 damage on your tower, every 100 counts. Another great Zap.
And all Scrazzor has to do is survive until overtime, right? Because one fireball is enough to take down that tower. And this is really the benefit of having an incredibly cheap cycle deck. He already has his Mini P.E.K.K.A up again. If he plays his Mini P.E.K.K.A, he has a cannon up again. And now the Royal Giant finds himself
great decision making, by the way, on by Scrazzor. Not only we can see it in half speed, he moved really fast. You actually see him switch off of the Hog Rider onto the Mini P.E.K.K.A as soon as that Royal Giant is played.
Yeah.
And sure enough, here we are with overtime ticking, the fireball to take the match.
Beautiful. Scrazzor with a very, very well put together Hog cycle deck, and then also equally as impressive, his Giant Musketeer deck.
I really like that. I'm going to play that deck this week.
Yeah. And, sometimes it's really interesting how people get so caught up in the meta. They're like, oh, I got to play the Royal Giant. And Scrazzor sitting here is like, well, why? Let me just play the Giant. And we'll see how it works. And he won the tournament with it against many, many Royal Giant players.
I mean, Scrazzor impressively ran a Hog cycle deck with no freeze. I mean, if you look at the cards that are going to be changed in the upcoming balance update, Scrazzor played practically none of them.
Yeah, absolutely. The only thing, as you mentioned with Cannon, there's going to be, Tesla Tower is probably going to be...
Yeah, I mean, the Cannon's about the only card, but a 5% hit point nerf is not crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, he ran Skeletons that are getting a buff.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. Already made it back.
So it'd be really interesting. I'm really excited to see how next Super Magical Cup plays out. I think there's obviously a whole lot of room for these players to grow, not just in their play skill, but also in their deck building skill. We're going to see a lot of interesting decks each week, I think.
Yeah. So, Super Magical Cup number 5 is going to be happening on Saturday, 12 p.m. PST, and as all the Super Magical Cups are, it's a weekly community tournament that you can tune into. Go ahead and follow our Twitch channel, Super Magical Cup, and our Twitter to find out more. This has been an analytical video from the Rumham and I about the grand finals of Super Magical Cup number 4. Go ahead and give us a shout out on Twitter or give us a like on YouTube if you enjoy. See you guys.
See you next week.